What is a single point of failure? A single point of failure occurs when any component of the system goes down, causing the entire system to become unavailable for the users. This is an issue we never want our services to experience because it can directly impact the business operations and lead to the loss of client trust. But fortunately, we have a magical component that can help us fix this issue, the load balancer. A load balancer helps us by rerouting the incoming user request to the healthy servers if some of the servers in the system becomes unavailable. Using a load balancer also helps us in scaling the system to handle multiple backend servers. However, there is a catch. The single point of failure still exists in the system. We have simply moved it to a different location. Earlier, the single point of failure was at the backend server level. Now it is at the load balancer level. A load balancer is still a machine just like any other component in the system. It can face issues like connection loss, power failure, or even system crash. If that happens, we lose connection to all of our backend servers. We need to understand that in distributed systems, we cannot completely eliminate failures. There will always be hardware failures, software bugs, power outages, or network issues. Our main goal is to ensure that a failure in a single component should not bring the entire system down. Let us try to understand this with an example. Imagine a system with 3 backend servers that connect to a database and other third-party services. In this system, the client sends requests to the load balancer, which distributes the traffic across 3 backend servers. Now, whichever backend server receives the request will handle the processing by connecting to the database or other external services as needed. Let us also assume that there is a caching service layer which is responsible for serving cached data to improve the performance. Now let's evaluate which components in this system could be a potential single point of failure and are under our design scope. The first is third-party external services. These are not under our design scope, so we cannot control how they behave if they fail. The cache service has only one instance, but it is not a single point of failure because even if the cache goes down, the system can still function by serving data directly from the database. Moving ahead, we have 3 backend servers. So if any one of them fails, the load balancer can distribute the traffic to the remaining 2 healthy servers. Therefore, the backend servers themselves are not single point of failures. However, we do have 2 clear single point of failures in this system. One is load balancer, other one is database. If the only instance of database goes down, the backend servers won't be able to serve user requests. Similarly, if the load balancer goes down, users won't be able to connect to the backend servers. In both the cases, a failure in either component will bring the entire system down. While we won't focus on the databases today, let us mainly focus on eliminating the single point of failure at load balancer level. So how can we eliminate this single point of failure, or to phrase it better, is it even possible to completely eliminate the single point of failure in the system? Let us explore some strategies that can help us. The key to solve the single point of failure is redundancy. We can introduce multiple instances of a component. So instead of having a single load balancer, we can deploy 2 or more load balancers. One common approach is active-active load balancer setup. In this, multiple load balancers are deployed in parallel, with each one actively handling the traffic. For example, in AWS, we can use Elastic Load Balancer, which can be deployed across multiple availability zones. In an active-active configuration, if one load balancer fails, the requests are automatically routed to the healthy load balancers in the same availability zone or in the different regions using the DNS strategies. In the real world, Netflix uses multi-region and multi-availability zone load balancing. This is done to ensure that its services remain available even if the entire region goes down. They use a combination of Elastic Load Balancer and Route 53 DNS routing with health checks to dynamically reroute the traffic. Another setup which is similar to this one is active-passive configuration. In this case, only one load balancer is operational at a time, while the other one is on standby. The active load balancer handles all the requests, and if it fails, the standby instance takes over. If our system is containerized and deployed on Kubernetes, then Kubernetes provides load balancing through the ingress controllers. An ingress controller is a component in Kubernetes that manages the ingress resources. These resources define the rules for routing incoming requests to the appropriate service within that cluster based on either host name or the path which is being requested. So we can say they do the same job as of a load balancer. Again, redundancy is the key here. We can deploy multiple ingress controllers in different availability zones or regions. The benefit of having multiple ingress controller is that if one fails, Kubernetes can automatically reroute the traffic to the healthy ones in another zone. In the real world example, Shopify uses Kubernetes with multiple ingress controllers in different regions to ensure that their application remains accessible even if one region or zone experience a failure. So as we have seen, the common solution to eliminating a single point of failure is redundancy. However, it is important to understand that redundancy isn't a one-time fix where you can simply deploy multiple instances and then forget about it. In reality, redundancy requires careful monitoring, ongoing testing, and continuous validation of your failover and recovery mechanism. Just because you have built redundancy into your system doesn't mean it will automatically handle the failures. For example, if the failover mechanism takes longer than anticipated, or what if some of the traffic isn't routed properly during the failover, these are the scenarios you need to be prepared for. That is why it is crucial to regularly test these systems to simulate the failures and see how your system reacts. On top of that, you should be constantly monitoring the health of all the components, even the ones that are not directly handling the traffic like databases or backup systems. If you are not keeping an eye on these resources, then you may not even know if the standby system can take up the load when needed. So in short, redundancy gives you the foundation of reliability, but continuous validation what ensures that it works when you need it the most. Remember, it's not about eliminating the failure entirely, but about minimizing its impact and ensuring the resilience of your system. So what do you think about your application? Are there any single point of failures present? If yes, then what strategies you will be using to make your system more robust and resilient? The another issue we highlighted in the previous video was, what if a large number of requests arrive at load balancer and crashes the load balancer itself? This is commonly known as load balancer bottleneck or overloading of the load balancer. So how can we make sure our system still keeps up in case of unprecedented load? Let us discuss some strategies to mitigate this issue. The first one is using the distributed load balancing architecture. Similar to the strategy we discussed for minimizing the single point of failure, we can deploy multiple load balancers and use DNS-based load balancing to distribute traffic across them. This will not only prevent a single point of failure, but can also handle increased traffic by horizontally scaling the load balancers. To achieve this, tools like AWS Elastic Load Balancer, Google Cloud Load Balancing, or HA Proxy in clustered mode can be used. If you are using a cloud-based load balancer, then it is better to enable auto-scaling of load balancers to add more capacity dynamically in case of traffic increases. For example, AWS Application Load Balancer supports autoscaling. We can define a threshold based on various metrics like CPU memory, and once that threshold is breached, systems will be automatically scaled out. Another way to prevent load balancer overloading is by applying rate limiting. Now let's try to understand what is rate limiting. Suppose your service has become a huge success and gained a lot of popularity. While this is a positive development, it may attract negative attention from malicious actors who dislike your services. One way they might try to disrupt your services by flooding it with overwhelming volume of fake and unnecessary traffics. This is often done using automated bots or scripts. With this, your load balancer and backend systems gets overwhelmed and struggle to process the incoming traffic. This could degrade the performance for the actual real customers or make your service completely inaccessible to them. This is where rate limiting becomes a valuable tool. Rate limiting allows you to control the number of requests a single client or a user can make within a specific time frame. By setting these limits, you can ensure your system can handle incoming requests effectively without being overwhelmed. Rate limiting can be implemented at different levels of our infrastructure. Load balancers like Application Load Balancer support built-in rate limiting features. For example, you can configure the load balancer to allow only, let's say, 100 requests per second per client IP. We will discuss in detail about the rate limiting in its own video. Now, we have discussed both the issues that we have highlighted in our previous video. You can share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. If you have learned something new today, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel. Also press the bell icon so you don't miss out on our upcoming videos about system design and best practices. Until next time, keep learning and keep building the resilient system. See you in the next video.